I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to have you along as well. What a tumultuous day or two we're experiencing. And today we're going to dive straight into many of the, what I call egregious actions by our new president, Donald Trump. He signed, I think, almost 200 or so executive orders. Many of them have direct consequence for Black people, marginalized people, immigrant people. Many have consequences for state and local governments. Many have consequences for what the nature of the country can be and will be going forward. I was reminded, I just saw a note somewhere where someone said that when, was it Andrew Johnson pardoned all the people who were in the Confederacy when he took power, that shortly thereafter, there was this period of the Reconstruction, but then the dismantling of all the progress and basically the reversion to a condition of, if not de jure, de facto enslavement for African people. It was a rough time. And the question is, will that be what we're looking at right now? Well, I'm pleased to have to co-anchor with me today, and hopefully in days future as well, my good friend Ndugu Yusuf Mjini. Yusuf, thank you. We had a great program yesterday. Number one, our KFAI broadcast and live stream was excellent. We want to continue that because we think the issues demand and deserve our attention. And our job as communicators is to ring the bell and to let people know that it's time to think and time to do. Yusuf, how you doing today, man?
Very good. Thank you for the invitation to join you again, brother. Always a pleasure.
So let's jump right in. Hopefully we'll be joined shortly by Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. We asked him to come on to talk about his department joining several other states in suing the president for his order around denying the birthright of children who are born in this country, who by the Constitution are natural citizens. And Donald Trump's executive order is rejecting that idea. Let's go into that first. What's the story and the backstory on that?
Well, I think it's important, Al, that you pointed out that citizenship birthright is included in the Constitution, and an executive order on its own merit cannot amend the Constitution of the United States without ratification of Congress and 34 states. So the president is reaching considerably beyond the power of his office to try and fulfill his campaign promises. He's made the border and illegal immigration a priority for all of the branches of the armed forces. He intends to continue his pledge to build a wall on our southern border with Mexico. And he has promised that this week raids will take place in Chicago, which are being described in advance as shock and awe, to rid Chicago of up to 1 million undocumented residents within that city. And there are a number of other executive orders that dovetail on immigration, on citizenship, birthright.
Let's jump into those. Attorney General Keith Ellison is joining us now. He's just in the waiting room. Bring him on and jump into what this means for his office in Minnesota. Keith Ellison, Attorney General Keith Ellison, thank you so much for joining the program and for the work you're doing. One of the things you have done is joined a lawsuit challenging some of the actions of the president. Why don't you set the context, tell the story, what you have done and what lies ahead? You have to unmute Keith. There we go.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Al and Yusuf. Good to see you both. Really a pleasure. And so here's the situation. So the president has been promising for a long time now that he was going to take adverse action on a range of issues, including immigrants, including women's right to choose, including workers' rights, the environment, a range of things. And I think for essentially optics reasons, he unloaded a bunch of these things on the same day.
Hmm.
At the very same time, he gave pardons to 1,500 people, some of whom who beat police officers and threatened the Capitol, all because they wanted to stop a lawful election. So
Some of them
that's what
have
he.
20 years in prison.
I'm
Some
sorry.
of them
What's
were
that?
given 20. Some of them were given 20-year prison sentences. Who he
Yeah.
pardoned.
Yeah, that's right. So Enrique Tarrio had 22 years. Stuart Rose had 18 years for violent insurrection, sedition, very evil, uh, basically criminal convictions akin to treason, right?
Hmm.
So this is what they were convicted for in front of a jury. They had all their appeal rights, and so that's the reality. So
And we're losing your voice, Keith. The bandwidth is
yeah,
kind of wobbly here. Try it again. Yeah.
Must be going through a dead
can
zone.
you hear me now?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So since last March, we've been working with Democratic AGs from around the country, and we've divided up all the work. We got numerous lines of work we've been working on, and one of the things we did yesterday, a day after, and we were ready the day of, but we just wanted to dot the I's and cross the T's, is we filed a lawsuit challenging this executive order regarding birthright citizenship. Now, as I think I heard Yusuf saying, look, birthright citizenship is a product of fighting against slavery. I mean, Dred Scott decision, which said black people were not citizens and could not be citizens. The that Dred Scott decision, authored by Roger Taney of the United States Supreme Court in the late 1850s, that the 14th Amendment was a direct refutation of that and said that all people are citizens of the states they are born in. And so that's why we got birthright citizenship. Now, if I am the child, if I'm born in the United States, but the child of diplomats subject to the laws of a different country, now that's a different story. But if you're born here, subject to the laws of this country, you're from here. Now, there was an important case in 1898 involving a case involving Kim Wong Ark. And Mr. Ark was a Chinese citizen. I know he was not a Chinese citizen, he was an American citizen. That was the whole point. Born in the United States, but his parents were from China. He was born in San Francisco. He left the United States, went back to China, came back to his home, the United States, and was denied entry because because they tried to say, yeah, you're born in the US, but you're Chinese, not American.
Hmm.
He fought his case on the 14th Amendment, and the Supreme Court in 1898 said, yeah, he is a U.S. citizen. So ever since then, birthright citizenship has been non-controversial. I mean, this is something that we all take as just a truism of American law. And it's important for people to remember that the 14th Amendment was forged in blood when the United States went to war against the slaveocracy in the South. It is a product of that struggle, and there's no way we should ever let go of that birthright citizenship, and there's no way we should ever let go of um, the case that I mentioned. And so that's that. So we filed a case, and
Hmm.
we expect to, quite honestly, if the statutory language, if the language of the 14th Amendment means anything, and the precedent of U.S. versus Kim Wong Ark means anything, we will win at the district court and at the appellate court. The
Hmm.
real question is, has this radical U.S. Supreme Court, made up of cronies, what are they going to do? Are they going to
Hmm.
uphold precedent like they said they would when they were confirmed? Or are they going to do something else? And I just want to say this, there's nothing conservative about overturning the Kim Wong Ark case. It is an act for radical extremists, and we're going to see, are they really conservative? Are they trying to conserve American law and jurisprudence? Or do they have a whole nother agenda? And I will also say this, a lot of people have rhetoric and they say, we're just against illegal immigration.
Mhm.
Oh, we're just against illegal immigration. Well, this shows that that is not true. By the way, never been true. And Haitian immigrants who the president defamed in a debate against Kamala Harris, saying they were eating
Mhm.
dogs and cats and pets, they were legal. And everybody's a birthright citizen is legal, and they don't like it. So we are not talking about just illegal immigration. They're trying to shut down immigration, which has been a cornerstone of American life since the inception. So um, those are just a few thoughts, but that's what we're doing. We're
Well,
suing, and we got more coming.
Yusuf raised the question that how this attitude will impact you personally and attorneys like
You,
you in states and cities that
you now have
are friends
you
of
now have
Defending
a
Yourself.
bullseye on your back, Keith, because yesterday the Justice Department directed federal prosecutors to investigate and prosecute state and local officials who don't cooperate with the president's plan to carry out mass deportation. And we know that in Hennepin and Ramsey County, there are sanctuary city ordinances that prohibit local law enforcement from assisting in immigration enforcement, which should rightfully be a federal role. How does this affect you and other local and state officials who could be prosecuted and accused of not cooperating with the president's plan to carry out mass deportation? He announced in advance that this week they would conduct illegal immigrant raids in Chicago, which they describe as shock and awe, using the military. What does this do for the sanctuary status of Hennepin and Ramsey counties and your office?
Well, let me just say this. The term sanctuary city is not a term in Minnesota law. It is a term we use in common parlance. It's a conversational term. But the only thing Minnesota law says is that Minnesota dollars and therefore Minnesota staff are dedicated to carrying out Minnesota law. And the federal government has its work to do, and the state government has its work to do. We're not going to do their job, and we're not asking them to do ours. So that's the reality of the situation. We don't have any obligation to cooperate with them. The 10th Amendment says that specific things are identified as federal jurisdiction, and everything else is left to the states. And the federal government is one of limited powers, and they ought to remain within their limitations. And it's not lost on me that as a lifelong civil rights advocate, I'm over here talking states' rights. But that's what we've come to, friends. Um, that's where we're at. The state of Minnesota has no obligation nor responsibility to do the work of federal government. They do their own work, we do our own work. And they should not expect me to lift a finger to help them do things, which, quite honestly, uh, many of which are immoral and wrong. Now, look, if they want to prosecute, if they want to deport people who've committed crimes, part of the reason, part of the bargain of being in another country is that you obey their law. So,
Mhm.
okay, but what we're talking about is way more than that, right? We're talking about people who have come here to work hard, many of whom are here, quite honestly, due to certain U.S. policy. I mean, quite frankly, if you talk about Hondurans who are on TPS, part of the destabilized situation there is because we supported Juan Orlando Hernandez, who is
Thank you.
a drug trafficker prosecuted in Minnesota court, not Minnesota, but American courts.
Mhm.
But we supported Juan Orlando Hernandez. He persecuted his countrymen and women as he was selling drugs into the United States, and yet he had the sanction of the U.S. So my point is, let's have a sane, reasonable, logical immigration system. Let's not abandon humanity, asylum, things that have we've known to come to be as a humane society Let's not abandon those things. Let's not separate families. Let's not persecute people. Let's have a sane, sensible, logical system. And of course, anybody who harms people and breaks American laws, they got to be deported. But other people, we should follow the courts, follow the process, follow the system, and we should fund it. By the way, we've underfunded immigration courts. That's a fact. So my friends in the Republican world cannot say we demand massive massive tax cuts, and we want to have a robust immigration court system. The two things are inconsistent. So,
What are
oh,
some
and
of the other?
you guys asked about me.
Yeah,
Don't worry about Brother Keith. Brother Keith's all good.
Well, can I ask a
go ahead.
related question? This relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion programs.
Right.
And one of the president's executive orders requires shutting down what he describes as radical and wasteful DEI program and departments in the federal government, and demanding that they be shut down no later than 5 p.m. today. And Meta, X, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, McDonald's, Walmart, and many other companies have already trashed their DEI programs. On a positive note, Costco has refused to abandon its commitment and says it will continue its diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts without regard for what the president and the federal government do. But given this notion to consider anything critical race theory or DEI, back in the day, as the young people referred to it, we had selective buying campaigns against companies that didn't have the best interest of marginalized communities at heart. What do you view as the impact of this attack on DEI programs and departments, and what would be an acceptable response on the part of the citizenry?
Well, I tell you, I am very disappointed in all those companies that have abandoned their DEI programs. One wonders whether they had any commitment at all to begin with. And hats off to Costco and every other company that sticks by it. Here's the simple matter. It is not true at all, and I've been a lawyer for 35 years, and both of you knew me before I was one, that DEI is somehow illegal. It's perfectly legal. In fact, it's the opposite of discrimination. It's inclusion. And so anybody who thinks that they don't want to do, if you don't want to do DEI, what you're saying is you don't want to do inclusion. What you're saying is that you are at least open to the resegregation of our society. And so that's really, I think we need to deal with the fact that we're dealing with some Jim Crow people. We're dealing with people who would like to reinstitute Jim Crow. Now, don't expect Jim Crow to come back exactly the same way. There's a very important case called there was a case involving a gay couple that where the company refused to do their website for them, and I think it was something like CI3 Creative. I might be getting it wrong, but it has creative in the name. And this website company said, we don't serve gay people. The Supreme Court said that was their First Amendment right. And so if it's true that you can discriminate against gay people because of your First Amendment, why then can't you discriminate against black people and say it's my First Amendment right? So they've already established the constitutional discrimination, and they've already put that back in the Constitution. Now they're saying no DEI. What will they say in 26, 27, 2028? I think we got to get ready for another civil rights movement, because that is what we're looking into. Now, Yusuf already mentioned it, selective buying, things like that. Let me tell you, absolutely, I think we should use all nonviolent means to make a society to live up to its promise of equal justice for all. That includes boycotts, protests, lawsuits, litigation, legislation, all of it. But I think the real point is that we have to rededicate ourselves to the principle of liberty and justice for all. And we got to get active and got to get busy and got to employ coalition everywhere, because we are not just dealing with a moment. Remember, Trump might have been elected the first time and everybody, including him, was surprised. He was reelected to the surprise of no one. And so he has some support in this country for some really immoral policies, and we can't stand by and let it happen.
Mr. Attorney General, as the lead attorney representing the state of Minnesota, would you remind the listeners and viewers in our audience who the primary beneficiaries of DEI programs are? Because many people suspect it's only unqualified Black people who don't deserve the positions that we're appointed to.
Well, white women are the primary beneficiaries of DEI. But I would argue that while they're the direct primary beneficiaries, the main beneficiaries of DEI are all of us, right? DEI is not only, it's about race, but it's not only about race. It's about sex, but not only. It's about affectional preference, but not only. DEI
Age,
includes age, right?
ability, religion,
But also
poverty.
veteran status, poverty. DEI means that everybody can expect some belonging in our society. It means that we're not just going to not discriminate against you. We're actually going to work to make sure everybody feels a part of this company, this neighborhood. Everybody feels welcome coming into your store. That's what it means. It means that we want an inclusive investor base, customer base, worker base. We want to make sure that we're really striving for belonging in our society. And to be anti-DEI means we don't want that. We want this company, we want to prioritize the people, the demographic.
Segregated water fountains, segregated bathrooms,
right. Hey, right. We want to resegregate America. But again, don't look for it to be an exact replica of the past. History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. It will be similar, but it won't be exact. So be creative and look out for the new thing that is basically just an old game, which is discrimination.
Keith, the University of Minnesota and other state departments that depend on or that use a lot of federal funding, how are they to approach, to assess the threat? What I'm hearing in the news is that the orders are coming or have come saying that if you're using federal funds, you cannot do that if you're operating with a DEI program. So what's going to happen with the University of Minnesota, in particular, all of our institutions that are utilizing and funneling state funds back to the state?
Well, if they fight back, I believe we're going to win.
Okay.
But if we knuckle under, we're going to see, a lot of people see their rights sacrificed to this very ugly Jim Crow agenda. I mean, because here's the thing: the United States really doesn't have any money, right? And we can use our leverage as a state, use our leverage as citizens to stop this. This is an organizing challenge. But let me just say this: if the United States government says we're not going to send you money that the Congress has appropriated for you unless you help us discriminate against people, then I think that's got to be a lawsuit, and you can expect that the Minnesota's Attorney General will be foursquare with you, standing up for equal protection under the law. That's where it's at. So the real question is, what's going to happen to? I mean, if they try to impound money, federal government tries to impound money from Minnesota because we won't comply with discriminatory behavior, then we should sue and say that the federal government has exceeded its authority and it has to be held back in check. And we should not take this lying down. I have every reason to believe we will be successful, but we've got to have a steel spine and some backbone. And I encourage people to, if you write poetry, write some. If you make movies, make some. If you do radio programs, do some radio programs. If you're a lawyer, litigate. If you're a legislator, legislate. But do not sit around and let this go by and hope somebody else is going to take care of it. This is the time for all people who care about rights to step up and get busy.
Yusuf?
Mr. Attorney General, there's already been significant division displayed in the state legislature in terms of what a quorum is and who's in charge. How do you see
Here in
this playing
Minnesota.
out
Yeah.
from your vantage point?
Well, my reading of the Minnesota Constitution and statutes is that the is that you need a majority of the House to have a quorum. That's 68. That's what the secretary said. He's right, and we're going to find out whether we're right in front of the Minnesota Supreme Court. I can tell you that lawyers in my office are ready right now, working hard, and we're prepared to show up and make that case. But I think that the Secretary of State, Steve Simon, is correct on the law, and where we stand.
Mike V wrote in the chat, Attorney General, the administration, and you've talked about it already, but you can address it again if you would. The administration is talking about putting, here it is, putting conditions on federal funding that blue states receive. So you've said it, but say it again. What strategy does the current Minnesota leadership have to blunt efforts by the new administration? How does our state as a state respond?
Well, let me just say, as a state, we should remember that the states actually predate the United States. And that is part of the reason why the states have certain rights and the federal government has certain rights. In fact, the federal government is the government of limited powers. And the states' powers are plenary. And the 10th Amendment stands for that simple idea. So if the federal government tries to withhold, withdraw, suspend funds to Minnesota or any entity therein because we won't follow their discriminatory policy, the federal government can and should expect to get sued for that. But know this, Trump does stuff he knows he's going to be sued for. We started out talking about this thing on birthright citizenship. Trump was under absolutely positively no illusions. He knew it. He knew we would sue over this, and we did. What he's trying to do is move what you call the Overton window. He's trying to expand the possibility of change in a way he wants. Certain things are unthinkable during certain times, but if you push the window, you push the boundary, you can expand and make the impossible possible. That is what he is doing. And so before, and Trump has done that on multiple fronts.
Story of his life.
Yeah, sexually assaulting women. He's normalizing corruption, being elected after, 34 felony convictions and no apologies, by the way, no expressions of regret at all. Doing exactly what you're accusing other people of doing, which is weaponizing government. So that's what he's doing here. He knows we're going to sue. He doesn't know whether he's going to win. He thinks his chances are okay because he appointed the 3 of the Supreme Court justices, and he's got Thomas and Alito over there. But, so he's going to roll the dice on that. But it's just like the Roe v. Wade. It's just like Roe v. Wade. How many people do you know, Al and Youssef, who thought the repeal of Roe v. Wade was unthinkable and not possible until it happened?
Until it happened, yeah. And so the question then becomes, how are we to understand that our rights are really, really at risk broadly and deeply, and we can act like it won't happen because it's unthinkable until it happens? And if that's the case, what ought we be doing? You've mentioned it before, but I think it's worth saying again: organize. How do we fight?
Absolutely. Well, let me say, all of us have been endowed with different gifts and talents and interests. The 2 of you are talented broadcasters. We need you to stay on the air talking about these issues. But the arts community needs to step up. The business community needs to be like Costco and say, we're committed to DEI and we're going to publicly say so. We're by the way, we are going to win, right? We will win, but it's just going to take a little bit of gut check between now and then. History is on our side. History is going to win out, and it's not just because it's inevitable. It's because we believe in freedom, and we who believe in freedom will not rest, right? So because we're not going to quit, we're going to win, and it's the right thing to do. So I'll say that We just need everybody to activate. We need everybody to get involved. Sometimes we need to protest in the street. Sometimes we need to file a lawsuit. Sometimes we need to run for office. Sometimes we need to broadcast and do a podcast. Do all of those things, and we will see brighter days.
Keith, hang out with us as long as you can. I know you're in motion somewhere driving, and thank you for joining us. I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. And if you're checking us out through Black Press USA, let us know where you are. And if you have a question for Minnesota's Attorney General, comments about the slew of executive orders signed by President Trump in the past 24, 48 hours, we'd love to have your comments, raise a question, and ask the question of Attorney General Keith Ellison. Yusuf, how do we, again, mobilize from your point of view? What's the working plan in the community?
Well, I think the Attorney General put it aptly. We have to educate, we have to agitate, and we have to legislate. And we have to do it at the school district. We have to do it at the city council. We have to do it in the mayor's office. We have to do it with our representatives in the state legislature. We have to do it with our congressional and senatorial representatives because they represent us. They work for us. We have to do it at the county. We have to do it at work. We have to do it in the social, fraternal, and soror organizations that we belong to. And we need to be having these discussions publicly within the family, across generations, across the front and back porch and the neighborhood, and make sure that everybody has the same information. I think you and I, Al, subscribe to the old dragnet theory, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. And we need to make certain that that stays, at the front, because there will be a lot of misinformation. There will be a lot of disinformation. There will be a lot of what the old folks used to call ignorance out there, in terms of people assuming that they know all the answers or they can predict the future. And there is enough of a challenge that we face today that a 747 airplane could roll down every street in our neighborhoods, and there would be room for enough people to fill up every one of those planes. So whether it's Black Lives Matter, the NAACP, the Divine Nine, the Alpha Kappa Alphas, or the Deltas, whoever it happens to be, people need to get engaged. Okay, you can't do it on your own, all alone, in your home, in silence.
Let me ask you, how do we hold corporations?
Excuse me, friends.
Go ahead.
Unfortunately, I do have to move to the next thing.
Yep.
But love you guys, bless you, and keep it hot.
Thank you,
Keith. Pace yourself, take care of your health, and take special care, brother. Okay.
Oh yeah, brother. Right now.
Thank you, Attorney General Keith Ellison.
Peace. Well, Al, as I said, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's the NAACP, we talked about selective buying campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
And when there were corporations that publicly did not support the best interest of Black and other marginalized communities, a boycott is illegal. You can't do that. But you can selectively agree on where you're going to spend your money, which social media you're going to participate in, whose credit cards you're going to carry in your wallet or your purse, where you're going to shop, and where you're going to spend your money. Okay,
you mentioned
right,
Costco, and I mentioned to you before we started, Costco
yes,
apparently has made a statement saying it's going to uphold and live by.
They refuse to abandon their commitment to DEI, yeah. And we need to support Costco and thank them with our dollars and our memberships for taking that position, because that's a very courageous position that may well cost them money from people who disagree with that stance and that posture. And if we leave them out there hanging on their own, then shame on us. Then we'll wind up doing business with people that don't have our best interests at heart. And if the only thing we can do is be very judicious and equitable and careful about where we pass our money on to, we got to do that. Okay, because how long did it take the stimulus money to come into and then exit the back door of our community when the federal government wrote checks to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
24, 48 hours?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I asked some young people, how many of you helped grandma fix them false teeth or pay her rent, or helped your sister who got them, several babies' daddies buy some diapers and some underwear and some school clothes for them chillins. And cheerins is what they call them down
Sure,
south, them
that's right.
cheerins. And if you aren't doing that, then shame on you, because each of us, as Frantz Fanon said, must discover our mission in life and either fulfill it or betray it. And that's a generational challenge. That's not one that starts and stops with us old timers, us elders in training, or however people want to define us. That's one that goes across the board from the time they can walk and talk until, I went to Scott Birch's funeral the other day, and you should have seen the turnout in the church and just the joy of people seeing one another and acknowledging the fact that some of us were still on our feet, okay, and going forward is tremendous. But we got to do that. And, coalitions, collaborations, support. I sat down, wrote a bunch of checks out. They weren't for a lot. They were for a little, but they went to a number of organizations in our community that are involved in this business. And I think that people need to do that. We got to spread the wealth. Okay, we're not going anywhere alone or by ourselves. We can't take anything with us. So we really need to be about promoting solidarity and self-sufficiency and education and whatever we can do that's going to help people straighten their backs and stand up in the face of this onslaught that we are going to be facing, not enjoying, but facing for at least the next 4 years. And it may take us 20 years to undo the damage that could be done in the next 4. And we can't wait until the 5th year to begin that work. We got to start early and often and with every opportunity that presents itself. And we've got to encourage, we've got to be positive, we got to salute and support people who are doing it and thank them and acknowledge them, because there are a lot of people who are doing what they can with what they got, the best that they know how. And Maya Angelou said, we do good until we know better, and then we do better. And when we do better, we learn better, and we do more better. Okay? And we keep doing it. And we must do better. We cannot just get along, to get along. Okay?
What are some of the other executive orders? You've looked at some of them. Why don't you run through the ones that stick out, that stink the most?
The orders that the president signed on Monday, as soon as he took office, focused on immigration, the border, transgender practices, and environmental protections, eliminating environmental protections. We've mentioned the largest deportation program in U.S. history. We talked about what's scheduled to go down in Chicago this week, and the efforts to end birthright citizenship. Attorney General Ellison is one of 13 state attorney generals who is suing the federal government over the birthright citizenship executive order. And the president pardoned more than 1,500 individuals who were involved in the January 6th insurrection at the United States Capitol. Okay. And one of the late night commentators mentioned that this was the second time that the president held inauguration ceremonies inside the dome of the U.S. Capitol. The president also pardoned 14 individuals from these extreme right-wing groups, Proud Boys, the Boogaloo Boys, and the Attorney General mentioned 2 who were sentenced to 20 and 22 years in prison, who are now free. And all of these people were involved in the insurrection in the United States Capitol, chanting, "Hang Mike Pence, hang Nancy Pelosi." There were U.S. Capitol Police who lost their lives. Only one of the 1,000 or more insurrectionists lost their life. I think in total, 6 people lost their lives as a result of injuries suffered that day. People were being beaten and stabbed with the United States flag. People dressed like Chewbacca, and the president, the former president, instructed the federal government to remove the metal detectors so that people could walk through and gain entrance to the grounds with automatic weapons on their backs and in their arms. And if you didn't see it on live on television as it took place, I mean, it was truly horrendous, absolutely horrendous. The president also issued orders to combat consumer inflation, which are going to take some serious doing and will not happen overnight, if at all. He eased the regulatory burdens on oil and natural gas production, including in U.S. national parks, including in the Alaska reserves, including in the U.S. reserves of oil and natural gas, and eliminated all of the restrictions, the environmental protections, and the other safeguards. He has issued an executive order to temporarily suspend the ban against TikTok for 90 days, which is also being challenged because bipartisan members of Congress instituted that ban. And again, an executive order cannot override something that Congress has done without Congress buying into and voting to support it. He also withdrew from the World Health Organization, and his involvement and horrendous posture during the COVID epidemic, where hundreds of thousands of United States citizens, Americans, lost their lives because he encouraged them to inject bleach into their bodies and said it was going to go away in 2 weeks, and only 15 people were infected by this deadly disease. How many people went down for a death now? Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, unnecessarily, almost 1 million people dead from COVID-19, while he looked the other way and tried to pretend it didn't exist and it wouldn't happen. And many people felt that his behavior with regard to the COVID-19 epidemic was the signature reason for his defeat when he ran against Joe Biden for re-election. And many people feel rightfully so, because for the leader of what is supposed to be the greatest, strongest military presence in the free world to pretend that an earth-ending epidemic did not exist was just completely reprehensible and unacceptable. But he also withdrew from the Paris Climate Accord. Does that mean that we're going to go back to, he said he was going to reinvent coal. Okay. Are we going to reinvent pollution and congestion and asthma? I mean, the largest incidence,
black lung disease.
The largest incidence of asthma and lung cancer are along the I-94 corridor from the congestion caused by the pollution and the combustion from trucks and automobiles and buses using that corridor to get through the Twin Cities without having to go through the hood, okay, to save 5 minutes getting from Cottage Grove up to Maple Grove or wherever they're going. And the president also thanked Black and Latino voters who elected him, many of whom must now be feeling some sense of buyer's remorse or God help me, what did I do? Okay, because they are going to be directly impacted, and there are going to be a lot of blues albums playing in the trailer parks, believe me. The folks may have voted for Trump. He had the oligarchs and the billionaires seated in front of his cabinet appointees at the inauguration. What does that say about his priorities, his loyalties, and his accountability?
Well, one thing it says, Yusef, is that there's an article in Reuters, I pulled it up here, that says President Trump Tuesday announced a private sector investment of up to $500 billion to fund infrastructure for artificial intelligence, aiming to outpace rival nations in the business critical technology. And he said that ChatGPT's creator, which is a AI, and SoftBank and Oracle are planning a joint venture they're calling Stargate, which he says is going to build data centers and create more than $100,000 jobs in the U.S. The point is this: what he's lined up is the richest people in the world And
Mm-hmm.
what he's announcing is that he's going to fund the increase of their wealth and their ability
Hey,
to
hey,
control a
we're
sector. Go ahead.
Al, we're going to have facial recognition in daycare. Okay,
Hmm.
identifying the babies who are eligible who can pay to come in and get daycare. Okay, if this goes through, I mean, $500 billion in artificial intelligence. What are the safeguards? What is the accountability? What about the liability? I mean, look at the error rate for facial recognition software
Hmm.
for women and for people of color, particularly dark-skinned people of color, is astronomical. Okay, the Congress ran a test, and they identified 24 members of Congress as being felons. Okay, with arrest warrants out on them because the facial recognition identified them as Joe Ugly or some criminals
Hmm.
rather than members of the United States Senate and Congress. I mean, it's absolutely unthinkable. And who did the tax cuts benefit? Did they benefit you and I when he was in office? No. They benefited the top 1, 2, 3, 5% of the wealthiest people in this country and on this planet, and in
Mike
many
V,
other
Mike
countries
V
as
put
well.
a note in the chat. Thank you, Mike V, calling this digital racism. And Mike, I know that you're a technologist. If you would just give us a note on the consequence, the meaning, how you interpret that investment strategy, given the need to create more access and to ensure that all of us, our people included, are able to use technology both to protect and also develop our community, our family, and to create generational wealth. Mike, if you got a thought on that, drop it in the chat for me. We'd love to have your comment on that. We had a comment from Choose Compassion. I wasn't sure exactly where it was coming from, but Choose Compassion expanded as I requested. The question was, what can be done right here in Minnesota about sexual assaults within DEI nonprofits and other DEI organizations to protect citizens in Minnesota from this so that there'll be more support globally? So I question why a person would say and specify sexual assaults within DEI nonprofits versus sexual assaults
In
anywhere,
general. Yeah.
everywhere. And so
Hmm.
Choose Compassion, when you make that specific, I ask you to say more, because I think you probably intend to be ringing a bell about sexual abuse anywhere and everywhere, not just in nonprofits, not just in government, not just in daycare, but anywhere it occurs. I believe you are raising a voice, and what you're saying is that uh, you said that was a hypothetical example
Sure.
that the Department of Human
Choose,
Rights exists to protect
choose,
class
yeah,
rights, but if people
choose
feel
compassion
failed by
also said,
organizations, what do you do?
yeah,
Go ahead. Go ahead, you said.
what do you do to get those to trust on a local level to come together as a more unified group? There are multiple organizations. There are religious organizations. There are legal pro bono organizations. There are civil rights organizations. There are social service organizations. There are neighborhood groups. There are affinity groups of people who belong to certain professions. Without mentioning someone's name, Al, I was approached by a person who was running the risk of losing their home.
Mm-hmm.
And I agreed to pick this person up every day for several weeks. And we went to 18 different organizations in the East Metro community
Mm-hmm.
to try and find some help for this woman.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only when we got to the 18th organization that we found the help that was necessary
Wow.
to save this woman's home and allow her to continue
Mm-hmm.
to live independently and without fear of the sheriff's office coming out to evict her. And it was frustrating. It was challenging because we went to each of these 18 organizations, shared the same information, and many of them referred us to one another.
Mm-hmm.
We said, well, you should go and see Organization X. Well, pardon me, but Organization X
Send me
told
to
us
you.
that we needed to come see you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're trying to pull the covers back and find out whose responsibility is this,
Mm-hmm.
who can assist this woman. And we were able to put together support from several different organizations, which combined was able to throw this woman a life preserver and rescue her and her home. Okay. And I, felt obligated to pick this woman up and take her every day to go to these city, county, religious, charitable, social service, United Way, neighborhood, and settlement houses and other organizations to try and find her. They say, "Oh, well, we do this, we do that."
And you kept going until you found an answer. An answer is
we
there.
had to. What was
you
I
have
going
to
to
keep
do?
going. So Yusuf, this is critical, man. This is really about the instruction is we have to be with each other and to not let each other go. And it means we have to wrestle with each other or for each other. Then that's what we have to do, and do it in the spirit of building a community, of building the muscle of problem solving, because the problems can be solved. And we have to see ourselves as the problem solvers. I asked Mike V to weigh in on this question of consolidation of wealth, and he said that the consolidation of wealth and technology with the banning of DEI puts Black people further behind the 8 ball in the world of the digital divide. And if we're curating and driving the frontier technology, we can help drive the emergence of these technologies. So he's against law enforcement using AI because the data is tainted with racism, historically speaking. Yusuf, weigh in on that.
Well, right above that comment, Mike also indicated that if Black folks are curating and driving the frontier technology, they won't be able to correct the algorithms that could potentially impact us over the next generation. States will have to take matters into their own hands, creating locally funded projects where Black folks can help drive the emergence of these technologies, and can do that in a way that is accountable, in a way that respects people's rights and aspirations and self-determination. And I support that wholeheartedly. And you've done programs on these, what do they call these Black people who are futurists, who believe in science fiction and,
Afrofuturism.
so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Afrofuturism. Sure. There are a lot of people, a brother that I grew up with in St. Paul, we went to school together, who now lives in a country in the Southern Hemisphere, is deep off into Afrofuturism and technology, and does stuff on the internet globally that just amazes me every time I talk to him. And we talk every few months and keep one another abreast of what's happening. But kids today are far more wired into the technology, Al, than our generation was. Many of us are Luddites. The Luddites were people in the Middle Ages who were afraid that the machines of the Industrial Revolution were going to eat them and not only take their jobs, but that they were going to wind up lubricating the machines. So, we don't know how to text or how to do stuff on the telephone or on the internet. That a lot of, my granddaughter can run circles around me with her cell phone or her laptop. Okay. And I encourage it. I say, go girl, you're going to have to protect grandfather when we both get older, and I'm counting on you. So by all means, you keep getting them A pluses and doing that extra credit work, because grandfather is depending on you. We need to be respectful of it. We need to respect and support the people who are deep into it. A lot of it may be challenging and difficult for us to understand, Al, but that was the case with the Civil Rights Movement. That was the case with the Black Panthers. That was the case with the original Black Lives Matter with the people in Ferguson. That was the case in Watts and Detroit and 100 other cities back in the 1960s, when people said enough is enough, when Martin Luther King was assassinated, when people refused to participate in unjust wars around the planet, when it was more difficult for Colin Kaepernick to take a knee, or for Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, to change his name than it was for Bruce Jenner to change his gender, okay, and become Woman of the year that he did it. So we're resilient people. We're used to struggle. We're used to progress, and we're used to supporting and working together, and we have to continue to do that. And I say that at the risk of redundancy because without uniting and working together, our cause, all else is lost. Plain and simple.
I think you're right, and what I believe, though, is that we both have and will call on that inner power, that resilience that comes from the retention of knowledge that we have buried, but that has served us well, knowledge of the ancestors and knowledge of a way of assembling what we experience right now and understanding that this is not new, and that we have a history of overcoming, of surviving, but also of creating in the midst of the crucible, which is on fire, and that we will therefore, given history, continue to emerge, continue to evolve, continue to transform ourselves and transform the world. That's what I believe. And I think we're up for it. And I think this is one of those times where we will be tested again. But I think we have a generation following us, and following us, Yusuf, that are saying, bring it on. Bring it on, because we're ready for the race, prepared. I know there are many who are not, but there are many who are. And we have to go with the history that we can do this.
Al, you and I are information freaks, and my wife of 55 years, bless her heart, has said she's going to call the fire marshal if I bring another book in here. Thank God for the internet, because I can read the Washington Post, the New York Times, LA Times, and a number of other specialty publications and blogs all day and all night long on my phone or on the computer. So the only things we keep are the things we share. Want to thank Michelle Delicious, Mike, and others for joining us in the comment section, for listening and viewing with us. And I want to thank you, brother, because you are the folks. You are the person who's planting the seeds that will bloom earlier in some people and later in others. But commend you for your persistence and your resilience and continuing to do it through insight, through the Conversation with Al McFarlane, through Facebook, through the NNPA, the Black Press USA, and Marcus Garvey House in the heart of North Minneapolis. And I've got a Marcus Garvey 50-cent piece on my keychain that I carry with me everywhere I go to keep me honest, and it works.
We'll be having Marcus Garvey on the cover of the next Insight News. And what I've done is pull together comments from the Gleaner in Jamaica, one about their announcement of former President Biden's pardon of Marcus Garvey in the last 24 hours of his presidency. Another article from the Gleaner that I excerpted in building the story was about when Dr. Martin Luther King visited Jamaica, I think in about 1965, on a weekend of rest, but he laid a wreath at the grave, at the tomb of Marcus Garvey, and made comments attesting that he believed that Garvey was the first Black man to create a mass movement, mass organization in the United States and in the world. And that's a wonderful story. Then we're adding to that comments that come out of the Carib News, which is a Jamaican-based New York newspaper, and just reaction of people from throughout the diaspora about the Garvey. Why is it important? It's important because this was a textbook example of suppression. The effort to decapitate Black people by decapitating the leadership, the role, the successes of Marcus Garvey. Pattern. You mentioned it was a lawyer, right? That made his life work.
Spent 12 years framing Marcus Garvey, and Marcus Garvey's parting words were, "Up, you mighty race, and accomplish what you will."
I think that's still the mic drop. Yusuf, brother, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.